Hi, this is Mariusz Bargielski,
And I'm Tamara Jones.
and our today guest is Alexandra Miles, founder and CEO of the Project Blackbird, with a focus on narrative film and mental health impact. She's based in Savannah, Georgia. She earned a degree in business and fine arts from Boston University and SCAT before producing Project Blackbird.
And also, Alexandra tours colleges and Fortune 500 companies about mental health and eating disorders. And we really want to dive into that. Besides the projects that you have worked on, which is Blackbird, you are also working on a project called ED, which is like kind of going through your background in touring these places. So if you want to just go ahead and talk about that, the floor is yours.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you two so much for having me. I am so excited to just have some good conversation with you two, and yes, excited to share a little bit about the upcoming project that we have as well. I will clarify though, Ed, ED could be about a very different story, but for us, Ed is a way for us to actually personify the eating disorder. And so the feature film Ed is one that I am developing at the moment. It is the feature version of the short film that we actually take on tour with Project Blackbird, with the organization. And Ed, as a feature, really takes you behind the walls of an eating disorder treatment center through the eyes of what I consider to be kind of a hidden hero. It's based on a young woman who I actually met in treatment, who is my partner for Project Blackbird, the organization. But through the eyes of this young woman who goes to the treatment center. She's a young, Black, faith-based teenager who is the only one really in her community that seemingly struggles with mental health. She's the only one who has acknowledged it, who has gone to treatment, and she looks around and there's really nobody like her. So what I really wanted to do with this feature film was to take the audience behind the walls of treatment in a kind of Orange is the New Black meets How to Get Away with Murder way, where you might never have been to a mental health treatment center, but you've been to a high school. You know what best friends are like, what affairs are like, what your mentors, parents, you understand that dynamic. And that's really what treatment is like, having been there myself. I mean, you enter this whole world of a new high school almost, only this time you're seeing it through the lens of Blackbird, this young woman who goes to the treatment center. And we represent all communities behind that wall because everybody struggles with mental health. So it's a very real experience. Now, we call it Ed because we personify the eating disorder through the voice of Ed. In almost thriller sense, where you have this voice inside your head saying you're not good enough, saying you're worthless, you're never going to get out, you're never going to make it, you're never going to become anything. We all have an Ed. We all have a voice inside our head that we struggle with that tries to tell us that we don't belong and tries to tell us that we will not be accepted unless we XYZ. And so that's what this story is really about, is this young woman really finding a place of acceptance and finding safety in this world and finding safety from the worst nightmare and the worst monster she could ever face, which is her own mind.
Let's talk a little bit, what was the beginning so for you? Because obviously you went through a lot in your life, right? And this is just continuation of what you went through.
Yeah. So the short film that this feature is based off of, that also was based off of something. And like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, that was my own, it was my own story, but it was about a young woman that I met at a treatment center. Back in 2018, I went to an eating disorder treatment center out in Los Angeles. And I knew nothing about mental health, eating disorders. I knew something was wrong with me, but I didn't know what it was. It didn't look like the textbook definition that I had read about in high school. When my healthcare practitioner told me that I should look into an eating disorder treatment center, I laughed. My family laughed. We all thought that was crazy because, you know, it wasn't resembling what I thought it was supposed to resemble. And also in my family and in my circle, we really didn't discuss mental health. So we didn't quite believe that it could happen to someone in our circle. You know, I didn't think anything could happen to me because we just didn't talk about it. So anyways, fast forward, I ended up in treatment, and that's where I met this young woman, Kendra Williams, who is Blackbird in the short film. And the two of us connected very deeply in treatment over a similar experience. Both of us had experienced that sense of shame around mental health discussion in our families, in our communities.
If you don't mind, what exactly was it that you didn't realize was a disorder or your mental, what you were struggling with in your mental health, that then this person was able to be like, hey, you should probably see?
So I guess maybe give a statement in advance that I will actually give a couple of specifics that might be hard for individuals to hear. I don't, I hope hopefully not triggering for individuals to hear, but I do think being honest about it is important, because I think that there are a lot of others out there that don't quite realize what an eating disorder might look like, because they're used to this textbook definition. So to answer your question, when I went to treatment personally, I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa. I was still eating 3 meals a day. I was lightly restricting the types of foods that I ate. I was on a lower carbohydrate diet. I was still eating, half of a cupcake, but I wouldn't have a cupcake. I would have half of a burger, but I wouldn't have the full burger. I was limiting kind of the amount, but I was having 3 meals a day, and I was doing really what a lot of others around me were doing. I started exercising for the first time. I had never exercised in my life, and now I was going to spin classes, and I felt like I was finally making friends, and I was a part of my friend group because we were going together, and it felt like community. It felt good for a long time. I really thought that I was doing what was good for myself. It started getting worse and worse and worse, and became a compulsion. And what initially connected me to others then began to disconnect me. I was going home early from social events. I was hungry. I was hyper focused on planning my meals. I wasn't a part of the world anymore. And that's what made me go seek help. Was, I knew something was off. I just didn't know quite how to define it or what it was. Now, that's one experience, but I think a lot of individuals also experience not realizing that they have an eating disorder because their bodies don't necessarily look like what we think an eating disorder might look like. It doesn't look like anything. Bodies, you have an eating disorder with all body sizes, with all races, with all socioeconomic statuses. I mean, an eating disorder does not discriminate against any individual or any population. So I think redefining maybe how we look at an eating disorder is important. And what I tell a lot of individuals who will inquire with me, well, do you think I have an eating disorder? I'll always say, I'm not a clinician. I'm not a practitioner. I can't tell you yes or no. I can't even come close to, confirming or denying that you do or don't have an eating disorder. But what I can say, if there is something related to your food intake consumption that is consuming your mind or impacting your life in a negative way in any manner, then it's a reason to seek help and to ask the questions. So that might be somebody on a diet consistently, and that's starting to control their friendships, their relationships, their relationship to their body. How do they see themselves? How do they see their self-worth? Is it tied to food? It might not be an eating disorder necessarily, but it might still be a time to start addressing those behaviors before it becomes more serious.
Wow. That's really interesting.
And for you, it started in a high school or even before?
No, actually. So the first time I can ever remember having a thought about the food that went in my body was when I was 23, I think, 23 years old. And it actually was when I moved to Los Angeles, just before I moved to Los Angeles. And I think for me personally, I had a series of different smaller kind of traumatic events that happened to me in college that shaped a little bit, and before college, that shaped the way that I saw myself. And I had an incident after college at work, in the workplace, that made me really question whether or not I belonged and whether or not I knew myself and my own identity. I started very much conforming to the practices around me, to the people around me. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, I always tell people now, I don't think Los Angeles is bad. I think I wasn't in the right place to move to Los Angeles. When I moved there, I moved with the assumption that I wasn't good enough, with the assumption that Los Angeles was going to tell me, you need to be prettier, a better actor, and skinnier and more fit. And you need to, do what everybody around you is doing to really belong in Los Angeles. And quite the contrary, I belong because I am in my home. I am my home, and I belong wherever I am, wherever I go. But at the time, I didn't feel that. And so that's when those thoughts started happening, and behaviors.
We're talking about the industry. You were not accepted in this industry or in generally in Los Angeles.
Yeah. And I don't think that it is specifically something that is only experienced by industry professionals. I don't think it is. I think a lot of conversation around eating disorder is tied to, oh, well, it's because you're a model, because you're an actor, because of social media. Those get a lot of kind of targeted blame. But I think that it's very complex, compounded, and it's a lot of what leads up to the point of choosing that career path. What leads up to the social media choices that people are making. There's so many factors that go into how you see yourself and how you see your place in this world. And I think trauma is a big one. And then just messages that you get growing up. Children often internalize messages very differently than they're intended to be internalized, because they're in a kind of me world. When you're a child, the world does revolve around you. And so when something happens, you're going to receive that in a particular way. And that is going to inform how you see yourself, inform how you speak to yourself. And then along the way, say then you go into acting, say then you go into modeling, say then you see things on social media. Well, I already speak to myself a certain way. So then when I'm on social media seeing all of these glorified bodies, now I've already learned to speak to myself and say, I need to like those around me. I don't fit in. I've already started to tell myself that I don't belong, if that makes sense. And so now I'm looking elsewhere.
I see. Yeah, and it sounds so much, you're right, it's very complex, because there seems to be not only the reactionary component, which is the eating, it affected your eating, but then there's also like this underlining anxiety, this underlining self-esteem thing going on, where you are battling a lot of different things from the environment, from your own personal things. And then now you're just like, okay, now I have to live, and it's affecting me. So that's very interesting, because a lot of people might watch this and wonder like, oh, I just restrict because I'm trying to like not eat fast food, or like I'm trying to restrict because I heard that gluten, in certain forms can be really bad for me. So what would you say to people who might like start to go too far? Is that also getting into the disorder component?
To be honest, yes, it is. But that being said, it doesn't affect everybody in the same way. And if it's not negatively impacting your mind, your relationships, the way you interact with the world, then who am I to say that it is disordered, I think, or that it's a problem, I guess. Who am I to say that it's a problem? Personally, I think our world has just become so disordered in general when it comes to food rules, food practices. We've become so disconnected from, I am a body, I am an animal walking on this planet, and this is what I want, and it's probably what I want because my body is needing this nutrient or needing something. I could go down the rabbit hole though of I could go down the rabbit hole, but I won't. But I think when it comes down to it, just being able to validate yourself and know that you are belonging no matter what you look like, no matter what you act like. I mean, there are so many different qualities of of a person, so many different pieces of an identity. And what my therapist used to always tell me in treatment was, listen, you could look any way you want to look like, and one person is going to think that you're the sexiest person in the room, and the other person is not even going to look twice. So and the same goes for a personality. You're not going to be loved by, or you're not going to be liked by everyone. So lean into who you are, and you will be loved by those few that really authentically love who you are, not who you pretend to be.
Love that.
So you moved to LA obviously as a mature person already. So do you think parents, could they do anything to prohibit this, or there's no way because you already were on your own, or maybe they could do done something before, right, talk when you were a child and put in yourself that you're an amazing human being, and despite how you look and who you are.
So here's the tough thing. No matter what a parent does, there is no such thing as a perfect parent, because I think as a child is so kind of in their own world, if you will. They're picking up on messages no matter what that message is, and they're relating it to themselves. And even the perfect parent, I'll share this with my mother, hopefully she'll see this, but even the perfect parent, I consider my mother to be the perfect parent. I mean, she's my best friend. She, in my eyes, even still barely do any wrong. I mean, I look up to this woman more than anybody. And I think that is one of my biggest traumas, is feeling like I should be my mother, feeling like I should be that good. So even the perfect parent somehow made me feel like I was. And so I kind of use that as a barometer to say, cannot be perfect for yourself, for anybody else. Now, to answer your question about what can a parent do, I actually think, and I encourage parents on my Project Blackbird tour as we go around, I think lead by example. I think be vulnerable and have open dialogue around mental health so that the child knows that it's safe to do the same. Because if you're looking up to your parent and you're looking at them as a role model, and your parent says, I got a little upset today, it's actually because, I had a bad day at work and I was really anxious, and I was feeling kind of mad about it, and I didn't quite know how to deal with those emotions. And then when you said this to me, I snapped. And so it actually wasn't about you. It was just that I'm learning to process these emotions, and I just felt really anxious and angry. When you just say, I think being honest, and communicating like that, my hope is that if the parents can do that, that will teach the children to then do the same.
And I know it's a very, very personal thing and case by case, but with the whole bullying, especially in the high school,
yeah,
how you can avoid not be ruined by your peers in the school?
I think that's a topic that really needs to be addressed a lot more than it is now, actually. I remember watching videos, and I'm sure we all did, but videos growing up where you learn about bullying and you kind of laugh at the videos. They almost make a joke out of it. And the reality is bullying hurts more than so many other interactions and experiences that we have in our lifetime, because it's in those pivotal developmental years. And when your peers tell you that you don't belong, I have not done research on this, but from experience, I can tell you that it seeds very deeply. And I think a lot of others who have had similar experiences might feel the same way. And it almost feels like it shouldn't be enough. And I went through a long period where I said, well, it really wasn't that bad. And so who am I to have suffered so much from it when nothing happened? It wasn't that bad, but it doesn't matter. The experience, it manifested for me in a way that was very real. And so no matter where it came from, I was quite literally controlled by this disorder. I mean, I was trying so hard, and I still try so hard to this day to work on to recover and to beat this eating disorder. But it is so real, and nobody asked for this. And when you ask, sometimes where things come from, well, bullying is a huge piece of it. So.
Well, then let's jump into you are touring colleges and businesses. What is it that you are talking about in these tours?
On our tour, Project Blackbird, the organization, we take around the United States and a couple of international spots as well. We take around a touring event that is centered around that short film that I had mentioned earlier, centered around Blackbird. And these two young women, Blackbird and myself, these two young women who meet at an eating disorder treatment center and form this connection and deep bond that allows them to open up and be vulnerable and start on their own recovery journey. And this is a narrative film, not a documentary. So it's based on this true story, but it's a narrative film. But on the road, we take this film, and following the film, we put together a panel. And the panel is always myself and Kendra Williams, the original Blackbird. And then we invite two or three different public figures to join that panel. And we've had actors, we've had some artists, Grammy Award-winning singers. We've had NFL players in the athletic space. We formed the panel to be different at every location, and we had this conversation around mental health in different underserved communities and how we've all experienced some similar shame and silence around our individual disorders. And it might not all be eating disorders. We've had every disorder on the spectrum, really, but we all had a similar experience of shame and silence. And so we talk about our own journeys. We talk about what we're doing now to actively work on our recovery, and then also to champion the conversation of mental health in our communities and for the rest of the world. And following that panel conversation, we have a journal prompt that we give out to the audience. And it's a journal that we have them fill out on the spot. And we have them write about one thing that they struggle with and then leave a message of hope to both themselves and future Project Blackbird participants. And as they exit the room, we have them exit into a resource fair where we have local, national, and college campus resources while we're on the college campus tour so that they know what resources are available to them on the spot. We have a drop off and a take me pile where they are encouraged to drop off their journal response and to take home with them a prior participant's response so that they can just sit with a stranger and in real time realize that they are not alone, that literally everybody has something. Everybody struggles with something. And when you can just sit with somebody else and not know what they look like, where they come from, but just read their story, take them home with you. We found that that has been really, really impactful to a lot of the students, audience members that we take this around to. And then the last piece is that our organization is covering free therapy for 5 months for any individual in our audience. We are paying for a therapy session a month, also unlimited messaging to your therapist. And we're doing so through Talkspace. Talkspace is a wonderful partner of ours that has helped us find a way to make this work for us too, to be able to pay for this and to be able to support it. So that's kind of the last and most important piece for me of this tour is, and for anybody listening, if you are in the audience of that tour, please take advantage of that opportunity. 5 months is not forever, but it's enough time to start to explore what might be happening for you and then to help figure out what might be the next steps of your journey.
What do you think? And it's also very, very difficult with the kids, with the middle school kids and the high school kids. But how we can get to them so they can open if they have problems? Do we have any way to do so they can open either to the parents or to, I don't know, to therapists, to siblings?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I have found that the event that we do, the tour that we're on, it has been really helpful in allowing these students to open up. And I think the reason because of it is one, the short film that we have, because it is a narrative film, I think it breaks down that wall that a lot of us put up when we're watching a documentary. You know, sometimes you watch a documentary and it's painful or it's interesting or exciting, but at the end of it, you're like, okay, I learned something and that's, you know, that's them and this is me. But when you watch a narrative film, you become that character. If you're watching a legal drama, all of a sudden you're talking in legal jargon and you become the person that you're watching. And it's a way to empathize and a way to also see what they are going through in yourself. So that's the first thing is bringing that film around. The second piece is the conversation that we have around it. And we very purposefully built the panel to include both us and these public figures because we think it's really important for these students to see, here's somebody I can relate to. They might not be a big A-lister celebrity. They're Alexandra Miles and they're an incredible founder of an organization and somebody with lived experience. But this is somebody that could be like me, that's somebody that I can relate to. Kendra Williams as well, somebody who's phenomenal and who is doing so much in the space of research in this area of mental health, yet somebody relatable. And then you have their hero sitting there also and saying, I am from your community and or I am somebody that is your role model. And I'm standing here telling you that I struggle too and it's okay. And all of us together, leaving them with that message, I think vulnerability inspires vulnerability. I think when we're honest about it, it encourages these students to say, oh my gosh, maybe I can speak about it too. And maybe I'm struggling too. And I will say a lot of individuals will come up to me and speak to me in the back of the room. I still get emails all the time, messages on our website about individuals who didn't even realize that they had a complicated relationship with food and now are starting to become just curious about what might be happening.
I feel like I'm at a fork in the road right now because I just want to go down the rabbit hole with you and I want to talk about food industries and their part in it and ad agencies. But since
we'll have a follow-up after
exactly a follow-up, and if you guys want to listen, you could do that. We'll record it. But, so I guess I have to ask because this is unveiling the industry. In your own experience and in your opinion, which is very valued here, what do you see, especially now that you've gone through treatment, what is it in the industry that you see that are the signs being advertised without maybe even being obvious to people who are starting to develop these mental disorders and eating disorders? And where are you seeing it in the industry? What are some signs
You mean signs that somebody might be going down a bad path, or?
Yeah, well, I would say, do you recognize when you look at the industry, watch, regular TV or just a celebrity on social media,
Yeah.
do you recognize the signs of mental disorders and eating disorders that people are idolizing and like are completely like it's going over their head that this is a disorder, but they're thinking it's cool? It's like, what are some trends? What are some things that you've seen that you can like point out?
100%. One, I think, and it's not for everybody. Some people will post a lot about food and it's wonderful, but I do think that I do know, at least for myself, in the peak of my disorder, really, I mean, all I was posting about was this is what I ate and food, like sharing everything that I had as if it was almost to validate something. So I think when you see a lot of posts around that, industry specific, it's really hard. I'm not hesitant to answer, but I never want to be somebody to even look at somebody else and make the decision or even make the assumption that they are struggling or that they're not. Some people might post a lot of pictures of their body being fit and they might not have an issue. Some people might. Some people might start to become a lot thinner than they were once before. And that might be an issue, or it might not, or it might just be their body settling into its natural state after not being in its optimal set point weight, so somebody could have an illness. That's another thing is, I don't think we should be shaming one way or another, overweight, underweight, set weight. I don't think we should be even talking about, other bodies. So it's really hard to say because when you just look at social media, it doesn't tell the whole picture, but I will say the comparison does impact our industry a lot. And I think while everyone can develop an eating disorder and or other mental health struggles, I think having that spotlight on you in the industry makes it even more complicated. I think it does make it more challenging. All eyes are on you. And there are certain expectations that even though, like I mentioned, Los Angeles was not waiting to kick me out. They weren't telling me that I wasn't enough. Yet at the same time, the industry does have certain qualities that they validate. And so that does get challenging. But in terms of signs to look out for on social media, I think that's a tough one. But I will say, and this is not a direct answer to that question, but I will say on the social media front, one thing that I have found to be really, really helpful is to reshape what my social media looks like in terms of who I follow and what I follow. And I have some accounts silenced. I even have some friends that I've spoken with that are more on the body side of posting that I am not comfortable seeing because it starts to rewire my brain into old habits. And so I don't unfollow them. I don't do anything like that, but I will just silence on the feed because I don't want my feed popping up with body pictures or food pictures. I now have inspirational quotes and art, things that I really enjoy seeing that don't bring me back to that space. So I think that can be really helpful, is just making your social media reflect what is actually going to make you your best version of yourself, not the version of yourself that isn't authentic and that will eventually hurt.
Alex, what we can, as an industry, what we can do more to shift this whole idea and perception of the human being viewed as a person, as a personality, not how we look.
Yeah, I think the more we can include in narrative films specifically, the more we can include diversity in terms of bodies, appearances, backgrounds, just diversity in all spaces. The more that we can make narrative film reflective of the actual human experience, the actual human population, the more I think we'll lose this idea that everybody should be what we're seeing, on film now. I think we'll just give the world a better idea of what the world actually looks like. And I think that's our responsibility as filmmakers and in the film industry, is to really, really influence where we can. And I think that's how we can. And then I also think, back to the social media point, I think when you have the power of influence as an actor, as an influencer in whatever space you hold, when you have that power of influence, be as authentic as you can and be as honest as you can. And if that means you struggle, say it. If that means that you are doing something that is inauthentic, but you're trying really hard to be authentic, say it, but don't falsely lead individuals down a bad path. Know that you are a role model and use that to your advantage to positively impact.
Wow. That was a wonderful talk. Marius.
With previous episode, we have as a guest person who also struggled different issues. Obviously, she struggled with the postpartum problems, but her advice obviously was similar to yours. Like, don't keep everything in yourself. Just open yourself, whoever it is. I mean, from the parent perspective, it will be great if the kids can come to the parents and talk about the issues. But in most cases, it won't happen.
Yeah.
Right? But at least if they can talk to their friends, or like I said, maybe siblings, maybe not, but at least to someone that they can open, and then avoid the even bigger issues, because those issues obviously they starting not in the college, not even in high school, but probably in the middle school, or in some cases even in elementary schools, right?
Yeah.
But do you think, and again, I'm not trying to shift or say that the schools should do more, but you think that actually the schools should do a little bit more about that?
I do, actually. No, I absolutely think that the schools should and can be doing more. I think it goes even deeper. I think that there should be more funds allocated to the schools to bring in programs around mental health in general.
In many cases, I think they're so afraid with the so many different lawsuits, so it looks at least, and not to insult anybody, but it looks like, okay, so we will do our job from 8 to 3 p.m. We try to teach the kids, but whatever to happen to kids, it's not really our problem, it's the parents' problem.
I'll answer that one actually by kind of connecting it to something that adults can probably relate to as well. But you go into work and you hear this phrase at work all the time: it's work, it's not personal. Or, I'm giving you this feedback, but it's not personal. Well, newsflash to everybody: you spend most of your time working and at work, and students spend most of their time in the classroom. So it is incredibly personal. It is your life. And so I think it is the school's responsibility and the workplace's responsibility to address the person that is entering that building, that is entering that institution. And I think from a school perspective, I would love to see the way that it's taught change. Not this definition from a textbook, but events like Project Blackbird, or experiences, or having a conversation that just really speaks about it more in a realistic way and experiential way, and doesn't just define it. I think we need to be starting a conversation.
Yeah, and we look at the thing obviously through our industry, right? But in schools, isn't also the problem that some teachers shouldn't be even there, because they are for wrong reasons, and that's why they're not really interested in the life of the students.
I think there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot that we could unpack, honestly, with the school space, especially, and that's episode 3 now that we've chat about. But
So
yeah,
tell us about the nearest future. So what are your plans for the next few weeks of?
Yes. What are your plans?
Well, we are ramping up for 2024-2025 tour for Project Blackbird. So we're doing some athlete orientations for different schools, different campuses, where we are speaking to all of the athletes that are coming in. We're building the panels around some of those NFL players, other sports as well, but in a conversation about athletes and mental health, because that is one underserved community in the space of mental health. They really are not. It's not safe as an athlete to say that you struggle. You could lose your job, lose your position, whatever stage along the way you are in. But so we're doing that, and then we have regular orientation coming up, and maybe I'll throw in a vacation in there, because mental health is really important. So I'm hoping to see sunshine as well.
Exactly. Put yourself on an island. So where are we going to be able to find the narrative feature Blackbird?
So that one is in development. We are still looking for some partners and some key players for that feature. So keep that on the radar. But the short film and the tour, we are going to be presenting at Cinema of Film in New York early August, and then starting our tour. We have a couple of events in Texas, DC, I'm trying to think, Florida. We have one coming up in Jacksonville, and then Los Angeles. We're going to have a couple in October. So if you follow www.projectblackbirdinc.org, that's where you can find our upcoming tour dates and more information about the organization. information. And then our social media is at Project Blackbird Film, and we'll be updating on the feature for that one as well.
And hopefully we can be a part of it, right?
Yes.
At least in the New York events.
That would be fabulous.
Look, let us know. Let us know. We're going to be working behind the scenes. But yes, Alexandra, thank you so much. What a wonderful and deep conversation we were able to have today. I feel like this conversation really will pique a lot of interest, because these underlying disorders can really eat you away before you even realize you've been eaten away by the whole thing. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for getting real with me and having this conversation.
Yeah, and thank you being with us and share not just your life, but also the organization, the goals. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you both.
So please like and subscribe and turn on your notification bell so that you don't miss any of our episodes, and you can continue to follow along as we unveil the entertainment industry.